So someone once said you're not supposed to talk about religion and politics, but my job, enables me to talk about both. Anyway, my name is Father Jacob Rouse, and I'm the pastor of Notre Dame Parish in Cresco, Iowa. And for today's video, it's midterm season. I'm sure you're well aware of that. I don't really want to focus on any of the humans that you'll be voting for. That's between you and your God and the voting booth. I do, however, recommend a website called isidewith.com that has a lot of different quizzes and inventories that can help you decide how to make the best decision based on your values and the issues. Instead, I'd like to focus on something that you'll see on the back of your ballot, after all those boxes that they throw in on the back after you're so tired and weary of making decisions. It's an amendment to the Iowa Constitution that's going to be labeled as Public Measure Number 1. And I'm not sure how much information is going to be given on the back of the ballot, and so that's why I'm making this video, to help you make the most informed choice about your vote. So you all know the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I think we can all agree that that's a good thing. The United States Amendment also carries over to the Iowa Constitution, which we can all agree on that too. But the amendment that is being proposed reads as follows. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So good so far, right? The sovereign state of Iowa affirms and recognizes this right to be a fundamental individual right. Okay, so what's the problem? Any and all restrictions to this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny. There it is, those last two words, strict scrutiny. So these seem just like really strong and firm words, but they are actually the third and final step of a process called judicial review. The three levels of judicial review are tests that the courts use to determine the constitutionality of a statute or ordinance or law. The lowest standard of review is called rational basis, which requires very little for a law or regulation to be accepted as constitutional. The next level is called intermediate scrutiny, and this places the burden of proof on the government regarding the constitutionality of a law or ordinance or procedure. Finally, the third level, and that's the one we're interested in, is called strict scrutiny, and it's the highest level of judicial review. Strict scrutiny requires the government to prove that there is a compelling state interest behind the challenged policy and the law or regulation is narrowly tailored to achieve its result. That's a textbook definition. So, what does all that mean? Basically, it means that voting yes for this amendment to the Iowa Constitution will basically say that any regulation of any kind regarding weapons or firearms or guns will be subject to strict scrutiny, and it will be very hard to pass any sort of common sense gun laws. Iowa currently has very few, if any, red flag laws or extreme risk prevention orders, which enable weapons to be confiscated in the case of serious domestic violence issues or extreme mental health cases. So any of these types of precautions will be very, very difficult to enforce if this amendment passes. So for an example, let's say that there is a physically abusive and violent relationship in a domestic situation in which one partner moves out and leaves the other. The abusive and violent party wants to hurt the other one and their children, but their right to access firearms will be protected under strict scrutiny, even though all we want to do is confiscate them just for a very short time so that everything can get sorted out. And a wellness check for a very mentally sick person with suicidal inclinations would not include confiscating firearms until they stabilize and get the help that they need. Remember that 78% of all gun deaths in Iowa are suicides. There are actually many gun owners, dealers, and law enforcement personnel who oppose this amendment because it could prohibit reasonable safety measures in the future, like universal background checks, gun safety training, and requiring a license. Public measure number 1 is not the Second Amendment. That is already there federally and statewide in Iowa and all the states, and it's not going anywhere. But what this Iowa constitutional amendment could do is elevate gun access above public safety. Finally, I think it's important for us to remember Jesus' words to Peter after he passionately cut off the ear of an innocent bystander in the garden in the Gospel of Matthew. Put your sword back into its sheath, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Jesus doesn't prohibit having or owning a sword or a weapon or a gun or even justifiable anger for that matter. I just think he's cautioning and advocating for responsible use of it. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches that the commandment to love includes oneself, and it morally justifies self-defense against an unjust aggressor, but within moral limits, using violence and fatal force as a last resort. So thanks for watching. I hope that explains a little bit about what you will find in the ballots on Tuesday about public measure number 1. There's a lot more resources and statements and articles and stuff in the description. I will put all those in there, and plus all the sources that I used for this video. That's all I have to say. I'll see you this weekend.